Welcome back everybody to the hunt, and today we shall be hunting the Blackveil Vaal Hazak, the spore of the New World. Let me just stop you right there. Blackveil Vaal Hazak is not a good fight. Unlike a lot of the high-end monsters that I genuinely don't like to fight, I think most of them I have an incredibly great conceptual idea. The Blackveil Vaal Hazak is legitimately one of the best ideas I've seen in the game ever, which is a monster afflicted himself with his symbiotic relationship that has just grown on him to become overbearing, literally taking control of him, making the zombies more zombified. And again, an amazing conceptual design element for a monster design. You just get shit like this. And if you don't know what was happening right there, let me just tell you about it real fast. Also, more bullshit ahead. So, what happened during that first feint is that while the Blackveil Vaal Hazak shot a beam, what happened is that his body was basically being oxygenated or pulsing with a certain amount of bioenergy that got released through additional body parts of him, just like it did now. Now I would pay a lot of maybe not a whole lot of money, I gotta be careful with my words. I would pay decent money to just watch anybody in the comments right now or in the audience watching this. I will pay you money to be able to fight the Vaal Hazak without any armor or armor skills straight on. If there's one monster in this entire series that I genuinely feel like is pretty much nigh impossible to take on, just due to circumstances and conceptual ideas of the fight, it's Blackveil Vaal Hazak. Speedrunners can get away from some damages that you can see in this fight. They can't do it. You wanna know why? Cause what it's happening is fucking bullshit. His body can pulsate random amount of clouds of spores, and the range is deceptively long. It can go from about twice the length of the monster, which in-game is nearly long-range levels. So while that pulsating energy of the effluvium can get pretty far away out, and it does take time, it's still unbelievably dangerous, and it does a ton of damage. Even if you have armor skills on, it just makes the fight a lot more annoying. It's just not a good fight. This beast gets so many free damages on you, it's not even funny. And outside of that, what makes him an even more annoying fight is that as if pretty much every other monster in this entire catalog of the game thus far, is that the main reason why people disliked some of these fights is because of area denial effects. There's, I want to say, about 50% of his whole kit, if not his whole conceptual design to begin with, is about area of denial. His effluvium fart, as we call it, which is the super move you just saw, is essentially a huge zone denial, where he basically pulses out lots of effluvium around, and if you stand in that effluvium, it deals significant amount of damage for a while. Now, with that said, there's a lot of elements that can be broken about the Vaal Hazak to make the things far easier. First of all, the spores can be broken. They can be broken. You can't break some of the mushrooms, the spores, the tick, however you want to call it, to basically avoid the pulsing damage. The matter in the fact that you gotta break these before they do any kind of pulsing damage is a little bit bullshit, because that will happen no matter what. The Vaal Hazak, this Vaal Hazak specifically, has so much HP, and since part breakability is mostly tied to proportionally the amount of health left on the monster, you probably won't get the part off before you actually are able to avoid the damage that those deal to you. Not only that, the spores can grow back, motherfuckers! You just have to deal with this shit! Ah! I would say that ranged weaponry is probably the best thing to go about while fighting this thing, but then again, so much zone denial, so much ability to poke at you from range with lots of projectile ability, and probably the most annoying move in the entire game. The Blackveil Vaal Hazak has a move where if you're too much on him and you're leashing him like a dog, he will rear back on his hind legs, which he's doing right now, and do this big-ass wave of effluvium. The problem with that is that this move, I am 100% sure that you are flat out unable to dodge roll and iframe this move with current movability tools in the game. Even with Evade Window 5, I strictly believe that it's impossible to dodge this move all about. And as you see, every time I've pretty much, well, I'm pretty sure every time I die during this hunt is all because of the pulsating damage and area denial effect that comes around with this fight. Otherwise, this fight would be significantly easier, just like the original Vaal Hazak. But you have to deal with bullshit like this where he sucks the life out of you and wails on it and does all this shit and nobody likes it! I had to get it out of my system. Let's look at the math, shall we? So, when it comes to the hit zone value, the Blackveil Vaal Hazak has an average of 43, which is really, really high, but that comes with a really big caveat. So let's look at it, because there's a lot of shit to go through. There's two different hit zone value for the head, one where it's broken, one where it's not, 65 and 75 respectively. 75 is a tremendous amount. You'll never be able to reach the head, and getting the head to break will take quite a bit of time anyway, which is damage you can get somewhere else by leaving the spores out, which, in my opinion, is a better ability or just a better idea to begin with. The neck at the 30, just out of 30, pretty much you won't, unless you get trapped in those areas, you will never actually try to hit those areas. The stomach at 45, which just like the original Vaal Hazak, is a great place to go. The stomach is a fantastic place to deal consistent amount of bit of damage without dealing with all the bullshit that you usually get at the side. The back at 25 doesn't matter. The back at 45 broken, again, doesn't matter. Back is pretty circumstantial anyway. Tail at 30, the tail tip at 50. Now, the Blackveil Vaal Hazak and the normal Vaal Hazak have a really, really hard tail to cut off. Especially when it's down. That tail just flips up and down, and getting consistent damage is very, very hard. Although you can cut the tail, it's not my main recommendation to try and actually fighting the Blackveil Vaal Hazak. You'll get rid of a sweeping attack per se, or lessening the range of a sweeping attack, but it's not worth it considering all of the other things that can potentially break. The highlights at 23, which is probably the lowest actually on the entire body, but it don't really matter too much. The forelegs at 45, when they're broken they're at 50, which is pretty good too. The wings at 23, which if you're a ranged weapon, sorry, the spore sack are at 60, and on the tail they're also on 60, which is where your main damage is gonna be for this entire fight. The spore sack in itself. They're mostly placed on the chest and on the sides, and there's one on the head, but that does not count towards that hit zone value. If you're gonna bring an elemental into this, bring fire. That's about all I have to say. Let's get rid of this shard, and then let's actually talk about a really neat element. So, like I said, you can break up the spores, and you can see there are pretty legitimately high points of value when it comes to damage and how much damage you want to deal and how much shit you want to deal with in this fight. So generally, if you have armor, yeah, go for spore sacks. They're really good. With that said, there's one really, and I do mean really neat ability about the Blackveil Hazak that I don't show in this hunt, is that the head is completely immune to being flashing, because the spores are blocking his vision. The spores have taken over the body, and the spores are completely covering the eyes. It's not like the Vaal Hazak is immune to flashing, because if you get the spore off of its head, you can flash the monster. But if the spores are still in its head, it is completely immune to being flashed. I've talked shit a lot so far in this episode. That is unbelievably cool. That is such a very specific mechanical idea, but it makes 100% sense in the context of how you fight the Blackveil Vaal Hazak. It makes so much sense. And when you think about that, you're like, yeah! And I love, again, if there's one thing I really, really appreciate about Monster Hunter World and Iceborne specifically, is that the attention to details as to how every monster can be interacted with in different fashion just make a whole lot more sense. Just like when you flash a flying monster, it doesn't know where to go and it just falls to the ground. That's so cool! That's so fucking cool! I love things like this. They're so good. The idea behind it are so welcome. It's a breath of fresh air into a mechanical breeze that you will most likely not notice, especially if you're used to flashing monsters to make the fight easier, where you're just like, ah, then you flush the monster to get a little bit of a reprieve so you can sharpen your weapon or whatever. And this can catch you off guard quite fast. And this is such a fantastic idea. With that said, do I have any strategies to take on the Blackveil Vaal Hazak specifically? No. Fuck you. There's absolutely no strategy to taking down a Vaal. Well, if there's space you need to go through is theoretically the chest. I think going for the head is pretty much a death sentence that you will never get anything out of it. With that said, the chest probably the easiest spot to go. There's a lot of spore sacks there. We can deal significant amount of damage. And also, once you break the spores, the chest itself will most likely be broken. Or the stomach, the stomach can be broken already, meaning that you're already dealing 45 damage. So you go from 60 hit zone value to 45, which is a significant amount to begin with. So really, it doesn't matter. Again, I would pay money to see somebody do a damageless Blackveil Vaal Hazak fight, whether it's in the Rotten Vale or the Ancient Forest. I don't care. Probably the only reason why this fight is tricky to begin with is only because of its mechanical ideas, its mechanical concepts, which I don't think a single member of the community likes to fight. Again, really awesome conceptual design, really badly done. Although there is one really neat thing about the Blackveil Vaal Hazak is that it has a quest that's been in relation with the Resident Evil franchise. Meaning you can turn into a zombie in that quest, which is the quest I'm doing right now that has its own unique theme. And it's fantastic. It's a really awesome collaboration that everybody should take into account. I think it might be one of the best. And look at that, I'm zombified now. And you can still draw your weapon, you can still get a lot of damage in, but you can also have healing factors from it from regenerating. And it's a great idea. And here's the move I fucking hate. God damn. So overall, fuck the Blackveil Vaal Hazak. We tried Reddit, we just couldn't do it. Join us tomorrow for another hunt.